great things about the internet is that people can find out what you're doing. And there's a chap called Tim Hepworth, whose father had a friend with Parkinson's, very good friend with Parkinson's, who died about 2 or 3 months ago. On that day, he came across my LinkedIn post and heard about my journey. And he thought to himself, I am going to help this person. I'm going to commit myself to making sure this person gets through and survives Nigeria in one piece. Because Nigeria is a really difficult country. And it's got trouble in the north and the south. And there's, again, a sandwich layer in the middle, which is possible to get through, but it's tricky. And so he's made it his business to look after me. He's got me to stay here.
Where is here?
Lagos in Nigeria.
Which is a big, bustling, not altogether safe capital city. Is that fine? Oh, it's not a capital even. It's
not even a capital. Yeah. It's got 22 million people in the city, in a size of in a city the size of half of Greater London. So it's got, and Greater London is, I think, is only about 10 million or something like that. So there are 4 people for every 1 person you find in London. It's absolutely ram-packed with people and cars and goodness knows what. But it's a very eclectic place. And I've met some wonderful people, Nigerians, who are very, very interested in what I'm doing. People are incredibly friendly when you can find them, because everybody lives in these walled compounds and everything looks the same from outside.
Before we talk about Nigeria, tell us how you got there. As I say, when we last spoke, you were about to leave Liberia.
When I was about to leave, I'd already been on the radio and on television in Liberia. And I then set off to the northeast of Liberia, because that was the safest crossing to get into what was then going to be the Ivory Coast. And I ended up crossing at a place where nobody crosses. It was a mud track with a bit of rope across the road and a bit of a bridge and a stream, and nobody else. So I got up there in reasonably good order, and on the way, the 2 things happened, both the same thing twice, effectively, which for me have absolutely made every reason for doing this journey make sense. 2 people came up to me quite independently and said, "Are you Guy Deacon?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And then I said, how do you know who I am? They said, "We heard about you on the radio. We saw the truck. We heard what you said about Parkinson's, and we really want to do something about it. We really want to help people with Parkinson's in this country. What can we do?" And I was bowled over by that. And it absolutely reinforced what I was hoping was the case, that the message is getting out and the conversation is starting.
Then you were in Ivory Coast. And what did you find there?
Ivory Coast is fascinating for 2 reasons. One is Abidjan is meant to be a super duper city, and it is, but it's big and quite French, which means you've got to speak French the whole time. You've got to understand the psyche. And the other thing is the capital is Yamoussoukro, which is up in the north of the country, and it's like a Brasilia. It's a modern city, and it has the biggest basilica, biggest church outside the Vatican, and some say it's even bigger than that, St. Peter's. And it's just built there, and you can see it for miles around, towering over the jungle, and it's extraordinary. And I wanted to go there, so I saw that. No traffic, nobody there in this extraordinary city with 6-lane highways and hardly any cars on them, and it was wonderful. And I was praying when I got to that point that the road from there down to Abidjan would be good, because I've been enduring potholes and sleeping policemen and all these things which had caused havoc with my suspension. In fact, broken one of the suspension struts. So I was limping along and being a bit careful. And I was literally praying that the road down to Abidjan would be pothole free. And it was a 2-lane or 4-lane highway, motorway all the way down, which was fantastic until I got to the outskirts of Côte d'Ivoire, the equivalent of the M1 sort of coming into London. And suddenly my clutch went. And I put my foot down the floor and I wasn't going anywhere at all. So I pulled over because I couldn't go anywhere. And the crowds came heaving out from everywhere around me to help, which is quite helpful, but actually not that helpful when you don't know what you're looking for. And I realized I was in pretty deep trouble, because I was in a rather awkward part of town, surrounded by people that I had no idea about, speaking my best French, saying, "Thank you very much for your help, but I think I'm all right," knowing full well I wasn't all right, getting into more and more of a panic, wondering what I was going to do because it was evening time, etc., etc., etc. When, by complete coincidence, well, not coincidence, by the best of luck, a French family who I'd met the night before in a hotel drove past, saw me and pulled in. And this chap and his wife and his 2 children under the age of 2 stopped and towed me the 20 kilometers into town and effectively saved me from the most awful circumstances. And that was the beginning of my Abidjan experience, which was pretty horrific, actually, because I discovered that the clutch had gone. Lesson number 1 of many, many lessons I've learned is don't buy anything other than the Toyota in Africa, because there are no VW parts anywhere to be seen in Ivory Coast. So they couldn't find a suspension piece anywhere, and they couldn't find the clutch. So shipping the clutch out was going to take quite a long time. So a colleague flew out from UK with the clutch in his hand baggage to fit it to the vehicle. And this
wow,
chap,
you have got such a loyal bunch of supporters.
well, he's a great chap, and better still, his father had Parkinson's, and so he absolutely understands what I was going through.
And did you stay long in Abidjan, or then did you move on?
Well, the whole episode took about 3 or 4 weeks, probably, by the time I'd taken the bits, got everything sorted out and the rest of it. And I used the time wisely. There was another day later on when we started engaging the press and getting on the local radio and getting in the papers, and that was very good. And again, widespread publicity in my best French. And I appeared on a program called C Midi, which is the midday flagship program for one of the national TV stations. And 45 minutes, the hour-long program was dedicated to Parkinson's in the Ivory Coast. And it was amazing. And
that's brilliant.
I talked about what it's like from my point of view. I got lots of the right sort of praise and wow, you're barking mad, or you're very brave, all that sort of stuff. And they did things like they interviewed my children without me knowing about it, so they appeared on the big screen behind me.
Golly.
It was fabulous, and I was in tears and completely touched by it because it was so overwhelming, the whole thing, and really good. And that went out to 25 million people. That's the viewership, and it was great.
You got out of Abidjan, I presume, because you're here now, and you got to Accra in Ghana.
And I got into Ghana, and again, if you're by yourself, this is the problem. I had some reasonably sensible instructions saying, go up the A, whatever it is, and you'll find a town called Togo, whatever it was called. And as it turns out, I went the wrong way. So I stopped the evening and found the nearest hotel, which was fine. Rang up and said, I'm not sure where I am. B, I'm not sure how I got here. And C, I'm not sure where I'm meant to be going. And I was meant to be going to a town up in the north called Kumasai, which is the Ashanti historical sort of capital, where the army was quite involved, and it's historically very fascinating, because that's where we're going to meet lots of Parkinson's patients and meet Parkinson's clinicians and do some important filming, because the film crew, 2 of them, Rob and Jack, had flown out already, and they were going to travel up from Accra. So I had to get myself from where I was, up to Kumasai somehow the next day, and I wasn't in a fit state to do it. So Chloe put me in touch with somebody who found another person who had me to stay the night before with his family, and he then drove me the next day up to Kumasai, which was a long old journey, and that was fine. But the thing with Parkinson's is you can aim to do about 2 things in a day, I reckon, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. If you try and do 3 things, you're asking for trouble. And if you add the Africa factor, go for 1. And if you achieve 2 things, you've done jolly well. And we had interviews and meetings and press conferences and breakfast meetings and television appearances over a 2 or 3 day period. And it was just exhausting. And I then had to drive back down to Accra to get ready to move on to Benin and Togo, which are the next 2 countries coming up. So I didn't think I was fit to drive, actually. So I got down to Accra with one of the film people driving me, Rob driving me. And I thought, we've got to think about this, because I can't carry on this way, not in my current state.
You had a bit of a crisis by the sound of it.
Yeah, a complete crisis, a real sort of question for sort of what happens now moment, because I simply couldn't do it. And I tried to drive, and because I was so conscious of the fact that the clutch, I've just spent a lot of money on the clutch, and it was because of the way I drive, and the bumps are so awkward on the suspension. I was driving on at 30 miles an hour, and I thought, well, this is ridiculous. I can't carry on like this. So Rob carried on driving, which is fine. And we got down to Accra, and I rested and calmed down, and everything sort of settled into place over the next 2 or 3 days. We still had some appearances to make on television, which is great, because that's why I'm doing this thing. I'm not doing it for fun. I'm doing it to appear and make the conversation last as long as I can. And I recovered enough then to set off the next in the next few days to Togo, which is a tiny little country and manageable. And I got to Togo, found a place to stay, and that was great. And then the next day I set off and met the Tim I'm staying with now, plus another Tim who had provided security at the border with Nigeria, and they scooped me up and have brought me to where I am now. So I really am the baton being passed from person to person, but I'm provoking conversation, which is good. I'm quite convinced that what we're doing is right, and what I'm doing is having an effect. But it's blinking hard work.
I was going to ask, how has your health been? It sounds like it's been pretty challenging this last stage.
If I'm really honest, not good, because it's a stress thing, as you know. And when things aren't quite going as smoothly and easily as they need to go, and they need to go smoothly and easily for people like me, then you get into a downward spiral very quickly. And then the Parkinson's grabs hold of you even more quickly, and you simply can't do anything. You can't make a sensible decision. You can't move. You can't turn around to talk. All the things that are dreadful become more dreadful, and that's just when you need to have your wits about you most. And it's very, very difficult. And how sometimes you just feel like just lying on the floor and doing nothing at all, but you've got to pull yourself up. You've got to appear and do. You've got to do what you've got to do. And it doesn't really matter how difficult it is. I'm going to get South Africa somehow by hook or by crook in that vehicle. It's not going to kill me because I'm not going to be killed. It's going to be blinking hard. But everywhere I've been so far, people have been so helpful. I am reasonably confident that I'm getting, because it gets easier from very soon onwards, that I will make it.
So remind us why you're doing this and what your hopes are.
I started off doing this for my own personal reasons, but now I'm not. I'm doing it for everybody who's got Parkinson's, because I want people to know what it's like. And by going through a bit of pain myself and having a bit of a difficult time myself, I can't help but expose what it's really like to have this wretched thing and how difficult it is. And if I just get the message out to anybody who's remotely involved in caring for anybody with Parkinson's, that's the battle won as far as I'm concerned.